Emma's going to be furious you're here, my mother whispered, gripping my arm as we stood in the hotel lobby. Her eyes darted nervously toward the ballroom where my sister's 30th birthday celebration was in full swing. She specifically said no family embarrassments. I smoothed down my designer suit, a ghost of a smile playing on my lips. At 32, I'd learned to find humor in my family's persistent misconception of my life. Don't worry, Mom. I'm not here to cause trouble. Mr. Harrison, the hospital board chairman, insisted I attend. My mother's grip tightened. The hospital? Are you working in the cafeteria there now? Emma said you'd taken some menial job after dropping out of medical school. Ah, Emma's version of events. How convenient that she'd forgotten the truth about my disappearance 3 years ago. Something like that, I replied, watching the color drain from my mother's face as Mr. Harrison himself approached us, his daughter Sophie by his side. Dr. Morrison, Sophie beamed, hugging me tightly. Dad and I were hoping to find you here early. My mother's jaw dropped. Doctor. Before I could respond, Emma's voice cut through the lobby like a knife. Catherine? What are you doing here? This is a private party. My sister stood in the ballroom doorway, resplendent in her red designer dress, her face twisted in an all-too-familiar look of disdain. The same look she'd worn 3 years ago when she'd announced to our entire family that I'd dropped out of medical school, too weak to handle the pressure. The same superior smirk she'd maintained while telling everyone how I'd run away in shame, working dead-end jobs to survive. What Emma didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I hadn't dropped out at all. Emma, Mr. Harrison stepped forward. I hope you don't mind, but I insisted your sister attend. We have some exciting news to share with everyone. Emma's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together. Mr. Harrison. You know Catherine? Know her? Sophie laughed. Dr. Morrison is the reason I'm alive today. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hand fell away from my arm, and Emma's smirk faltered for the first time. There must be some mistake, Emma said quickly. Catherine's not a doctor. She dropped out years ago. She's been away. Yes, I have been away. At Johns Hopkins, completing my residency in oncology while pioneering a groundbreaking treatment protocol. The same protocol that had saved Sophie Harrison's life when every other doctor had given up hope. I think Mr. Harrison said firmly, it's time everyone knew the truth about Dr. Catherine Morrison. Emma's eyes narrowed. What truth? She's nothing but a failure woe, who just became the youngest head of oncology in Boston General's history, Mr. Harrison interrupted, and who developed the treatment that saved my daughter's life. The champagne glass in Emma's hand slipped, shattering on the marble floor. Behind her, party guests began to gather, drawn by the commotion. That's impossible, my mother whispered. You told us she was working odd jobs, Emma. You said she couldn't handle medical school. Emma's face had gone pale. She left. She disappeared. She never answered our calls or your calls. I finally spoke, my voice calm. You mean the calls where you told everyone I failed? The messages calling me weak, telling me to stay away from family events because I was an embarrassment. Mr. Harrison placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. Dr. Morrison chose to focus on her research rather than defend herself against false accusations, a decision that saved not only my Sophie but dozens of other patients as well. The crowd in the doorway had grown larger. I could see my father there, his face a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. Aunt Patricia, who'd always been Emma's biggest supporter, stood with her hand over her mouth. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Harrison announced, his voice carrying through the lobby. I'd like you all to meet Dr. Catherine Morrison, Boston General's new head of oncology and the brilliant mind behind the Morrison protocol for aggressive cancer treatment. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Emma's heel crunching on broken glass as she stepped backward. This wasn't how I'd planned to reveal the truth. But standing there, watching my sister's carefully constructed narrative crumble around her, I realized sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising above. Shall we head inside? I suggested calmly. I believe we have a birthday to celebrate. The ballroom was exactly what I'd expected from Emma. Extravagant floral arrangements, crystal chandeliers, and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. As we entered, I could feel every eye in the room on me, the prodigal daughter whose return had just shattered years of carefully crafted lies. Emma rushed ahead, presumably to warn her husband Michael about my unexpected appearance. I watched as she grabbed his arm, whispering urgently. His head snapped up, eyes widening as they met mine across the room. "Catherine," my father's voice came from behind me, uncertain and hesitant. "Why didn't you tell us?" I turned to face him, noting the new gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 3 years ago. "Would you have believed me over Emma?" His silence was answer enough. "Dr. Morrison," Sophie touched my arm gently. "Would you like to see the presentation we prepared?" Dad thought it would be the perfect way to announce the new cancer center. "New cancer center?" My mother's voice was faint. Mr. Harrison smiled broadly. "Yes, Boston General is opening a specialized treatment center, implementing Catherine's protocol. The Morrison Center for Advanced Cancer Treatment." The whispers in the room grew louder. I caught fragments of conversations. Morrison protocol, youngest department head, groundbreaking research. Emma's voice cut through the buzz, sharp and desperate. "This is my birthday party. You can't just come in here and take over with your stories." "Stories?" Sophie stepped forward, her voice firm. "Dr. Morrison spent 6 months treating me when every other doctor had given up. She worked through nights, refined her protocol, and saved my life. That's not a story, that's a miracle." I watched as Emma's friends, the same ones who'd heard for years about her failure of a sister, exchanged glances. The narrative was shifting, and she could feel her grip on it slipping away. "But you never came to family events," my mother said, still struggling to understand. "Christmas, Thanksgiving." "I was working," I replied simply. Someone's daughter was always fighting for their life. Someone's sister needed the treatment only I could provide. I chose to be there for them since I clearly wasn't welcome here. Michael approached, his lawyer's instincts probably telling him to damage control. "Catherine, this is quite a surprise. Emma was just telling me." "I'm sure she was," I interrupted smoothly. "Just like she told everyone I was working at a diner in Chicago when I was actually presenting my research at medical conferences. Or how about when she told Aunt Patricia I was too ashamed to show my face at her wedding, when I was actually in surgery saving a 12-year-old girl?" The string quartet had stopped playing. The entire room was watching our family drama unfold. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "If I may, I'd like to show everyone what Dr. Morrison has achieved." He nodded to Sophie, who pulled out a remote control. A screen descended from the ceiling, part of Emma's elaborate party setup, and suddenly the room was filled with images. Me in surgical scrubs, focused on a complex procedure. News headlines about the Morrison protocol's success rates. Pictures of recovered patients, including Sophie, beaming with renewed health. My recent appointment announcement at Boston General, featuring a professional headshot that made Emma's carefully curated party photos look amateur in comparison. While some people were spreading rumors, Sophie said clearly, Dr. Morrison was saving lives. I saw tears in my mother's eyes as she watched the presentation. My father couldn't seem to look away from a video clip of me explaining my treatment methodology to a panel of international doctors. Emma stood frozen, her perfect party imploding around her. Her carefully maintained image as the successful sister, the one who'd made it while I'd failed, was crumbling in real time. "I think," I said quietly, "I owe everyone an explanation. Yes, I left 3 years ago. Not because I failed, but because I needed to focus. Every time I came home, I had to defend myself against Emma's rumors, had to watch my family believe the worst of me. So I made a choice. I could either waste energy fighting lies, or I could put that energy into saving lives." Mr. Harrison stepped forward. "And that choice has made all the difference for families like mine. The Morrison Center will help us save thousands more." I could see Emma's hands trembling as she gripped her fresh champagne glass. Her perfect birthday party had turned into my vindication, and there was nothing she could do about it. Now I smiled. "I believe we were here to celebrate. Shall we continue with the party?" The string quartet resumed playing, but the atmosphere had shifted irreversibly. As guests began approaching me to congratulate me and ask about my work, I caught glimpses of Emma standing alone, watching her carefully constructed narrative about her failure of a sister dissolve into something she never expected, the truth. The evening progressed with a surreal quality. People who had once avoided eye contact with me at family gatherings now clamored for my attention. Emma's society friends, who'd listened to her stories about my failures for years, suddenly wanted to discuss medical breakthroughs and cancer research. I noticed Emma standing by the bar, downing her third champagne. Michael hovered nearby, his lawyer's mind probably calculating the damage to their social standing. After all, they'd spent years portraying me as the family disappointment, only to have me emerge as a pioneering doctor with a treatment center named after me. Catherine, my father approached, looking older and more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. Could we talk? Privately. I followed him to a quiet corner of the ballroom. He struggled for words, his hands fidgeting with his tie. I failed you, he finally said. I should have asked you directly instead of believing. Instead of believing Emma, I finished for him. Like you always did. He flinched. We thought we were protecting you. Emma said you were too proud to admit you couldn't handle medical school, that you'd rather disappear than face failure. And it never occurred to you to verify her story, to maybe call the medical school. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. Before I could respond, my mother joined us, tears streaming down her face. All those Christmases, birthdays, we thought you were avoiding us because you were ashamed, but you were saving lives. I sent cards, I said quietly, every holiday. Emma told you she returned them. My mother's face crumpled. She said it was kinder, that you weren't ready to face us. Mr. Harrison's voice suddenly filled the room. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. He stood at the front of the ballroom, Sophie beside him. While this is indeed a birthday celebration, I hope Emma won't mind if we take a moment to make an important announcement. Emma's face was a mask of barely contained fury as she watched her party being commandeered. Mr. Harrison continued, the Morrison Center for Advanced Cancer Treatment will open its doors next month, thanks to a generous grant from the Harrison Foundation, but more importantly, thanks to the brilliant doctor who never gave up, who chose to focus on saving lives rather than defending herself against unfair accusations. Sophie stepped forward. Dr. Morrison didn't just save my life. She gave hope to patients who had none. While some people, her eyes flickered to Emma, were spreading rumors about her disappearance, she was working 18-hour days, refining a treatment that would save dozens of lives. I felt a small hand slip into mine and looked down to see my niece, Emma's daughter Lucy, standing beside me. Aunt Catherine, she whispered, did you really save all those people? I knelt down to her level. I did my best, sweetheart. Mom said you were a failure, she said innocently, but you're actually a hero. From across the room, I saw Emma start forward, probably to whisk Lucy away, but Michael held her back. The damage was done. Her own daughter had spoken the truth they'd all been realizing throughout the evening. Mr. Harrison raised his glass. To Dr. Catherine Morrison, whose dedication to her patients meant more to her than correcting malicious gossip. The medical community is honored to have you, and I know I speak for many parents when I say thank you for giving us back our children. The room erupted in applause. I saw my father wiping tears from his eyes, my mother clutching her hands to her chest. Aunt Patricia was openly crying. Emma stood alone by the bar, her perfect party transformed into a celebration of everything she tried to diminish. Her carefully crafted narrative had crumbled, replaced by a truth far more powerful than any lie she could have invented. As the evening wound down, I found myself by the door, saying goodbye to guests. Emma approached, her makeup slightly smeared, her composed facade cracking. You could have told them, she said, her voice barely audible. Any time in the past 3 years, you could have exposed my lies. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and felt something close to pity. I had more important things to focus on than your lies, Emma. Lives to save, research to complete. Your stories about me? They said more about you than they ever did about me. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Happy birthday, Emma, I said softly, turning to leave. I hope you got everything you deserved. As I walked out of the ballroom, I heard Mr. Harrison discussing plans for the center's opening ceremony with my parents. Emma's birthday party had become something else entirely. A reminder that success isn't about proving others wrong, but about staying true to what matters most. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply letting the